Sometimes, people think that when you leave a good company, something dramatic must have happened. But the truth is that sometimes you leave because what looks good on paper does not match what you experience in real life. And I'm going to just share with you a little experience I just, had. So when I joined this company, one of the things that attracted me was their charting system. And you saw me where I talk about this AI. The practice is to use AI for the nurse practitioner notes or in general, the provider notes. And honestly, that felt very big. It was a huge advantage because as we know, documentation, it takes a lot of time. It takes up so much of our time in healthcare. Even as a nurse, you see how much we have to document. Anything that improves efficiency is always a plus. And I'm always looking forward to that. The company also used the RVU pay model, which can be very beneficial when productivity and workflow are aligned properly. So initially, everything sounded good and it sounded very promising for me. And I will talk about the RVU model shortly so you can have a better understanding. But once I started working in the facilities, I realized that the actual workflow was a little bit different from what I experienced, or, it was a little bit different from what I expected. So instead of using the same AI supported charting system consistently, the facilities, they had their own documentation process. And in many cases, I had to chart using an older, more traditional method. That alone already increased the amount of work time that is needed for each patient encounter. So there I was like, this probably ain't gonna be working. But anyways, I was trying my best to see how this could work. What made it even more difficult was the double charting. Yes, when I say double charting, if I see one patient, it means that I have to duplicate the chart. I was entering the notes in one system, then having to repeat documentation again in another system. And as a healthcare provider, charting is not just typing words. It requires accuracy. It requires clinical thinking, compliance, and attention to detail. So that is something that, you have to take into consideration. So just imagine doing that twice for the same patient. Yes, just doing it twice for the same patient. It is very time consuming, and instead of focusing on the efficiency and the patient flow, a lot of time is now being lost on repetitive. Administrative work. Yes, we not like that. Me not like it. So that is something that I was dealing with, and because of the company base, the model that they use for pay, that RVU that I told you, productivity is something that is very important. And if your documentation process is very slow, then it's going to slow you down. It directly affects how much you earn, how much you generate, and affects how much income you take home. So for me, it came down to this. Was the workload matching my return? Was the process efficient enough for me to, take on this in the long run? And to be honest, no, it never really makes sense. When I sit down and just think about it, it wasn't. It was not that the company itself was bad. In fact, there were good aspects of it that I really, really love about it. But the system being used in the actual facilities, it did not support the level of efficiency I needed, especially when time is very important, and productivity directly impacted my earnings. And yes, them always say money is not all, but definitely when you have an RVU model that you're working with, yes, money is everything. Sometimes leaving is not, about negativity. It's about recognizing when something is not sustainable for you professionally, financially, and mentally. And once you're able to identify that, then you just have to make that decision. A good company still has, to fit your workflow. It still has to fit your goals and the reality of your day-to-day practice. And that's just it. And if it does not, it is okay for you to choose differently. So just speak with your company, manager, your boss, the owner, whatever it is. And then from there, you can always part ways with those individuals. And for me, that is what I did. So when I identify that from the first week, I wrote my resignation letter and sent it in and identify all the different things that made me wanting to leave. and let them know that this is my 90 days. And hopefully I asked them if I could actually get an early release, and the owner says yes, the boss says yes, the manager says yes. And within 2 weeks of me handing in my resignation letter, then they gave me my early termination release from that company. And as I say, it's a good company. The charting system that they use is very good, but the ones that they have in the facilities, it's not. And based on the model that they use for pay, it's not gonna be beneficial because of the duplicated charting, and it's not gonna be efficient for me as a provider that is using that model, where time is very important as it relates to my productivity and my earnings. So make sure that you ask about all of these things. I will definitely talk a little bit more on the RVU model and productivity and everything else that I can provide you with as it relates to this little situation that I encounter, so you can make that necessary, ask the right questions when you are picking or choosing your nurse practitioner job, and you're choosing the different models or pay scale for your career. Remember to go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube page here, I Think Nursing. Follow me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and all the other social media platforms where I share content related to nursing, travel, and lifestyle. Until then,